Happy Take Me Outside Day. My name is Rachel. I'm the Education Program Coordinator with Take Me Outside, and I'm joined by Julie, who's our Program Manager at Take Me Outside. And we're so excited that you're joining us here for this nature poetry session with Hannah Flores. So just a few reminders for today's session. Also, please feel free to share in the chat where you're joining us from. Some of you have already done that, but we'd love to know the school or organization or where you are joining us from and the grade of class that you are. But just a few reminders for today's session that you will need some paper and something to write with for this session. If you do require closed captions and you are watching right now on StreamYard, we suggest that you hop on over to YouTube. YouTube does have a closed caption feature that you can access for this session. We will have time for questions at the end, so feel free to save your questions, write down your questions as we're going, and we do have time for Hannah to answer some questions at the end of the session. And we do have prizes that we are going to be giving away to attendees. They will be randomly selected from the participants of today's session, and you will be emailed at the end of the day. Now, one of our colleagues, Jade, has a mentor who shared this teaching with us at the Take Me Outside team, and it really has resonated with me. And so it was from Tim Patterson from Little Nicola Band. And he shared that it's not about acknowledging the land or the people of a particular land, but asking what this knowledge and feeling compels you to do. So this year for Take Me Outside Week, we have put together a land acknowledgement mindfulness activity that really shows how land acknowledgements can be a living thing. So I'm going to get everybody just to get comfy in their seat. You can sit. If you're in a position that you maybe want to like lie down or put your head on your desk, you definitely can do that. I'm going to ask that you take a deep breath in through your nose and slowly exhale through your mouth. Now, you can do that 2 more times. Inhale and exhale. Now, 1 more time, breathe in deeply and release. Now, as your breath settles into a natural rhythm, know that there is nothing to do, nowhere to go, and just be here in this moment. Now, in your mind, begin to recall a time you were outdoors, a moment you may have felt calm, joyful, meaningful. Maybe it was playing in a park, walking in a forest, going to a lake, waiting for the bus, walking home from school, or even sitting in your backyard or looking out the window. It can be a memory that makes you smile or feel calm. Take a moment to let that memory form. Where are you? What do you notice around you? What colors and shapes fill this memory? Now, begin to connect with the sounds of this place. What kind of sounds can you hear in this place? Maybe birds singing, wind in the leaves, or the crunch of gravel under your feet. Let those sounds fill your mind. Now take another slow and deep breath in and breath out, nice and slow. Take a moment to silently say thank you to this outdoor place and everything in it. Take a moment to say thank you to the animals, both big and small, that share this space with us. Take a moment to say thank you to the Indigenous people who steward and care for the land before us and continue to do so today. Now, when you're ready, imagine the memory slowly fading, but know you can always visit it again. Anytime you want to feel calm, strong, or happy. Now wiggle your fingers and toes, take 1 more big breath in, and let it out. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And so when I do this exercise, I'm taken to a place by my house on the shores of the Red River in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And this is where I feel deeply connected to the land and a deep gratitude for the lessons the land teaches me through the seasons, and also for the Indigenous people who have stewarded these lands and waters. I'm very honored to live and learn on Treaty 1 territory, which is the original lands of the Anishinaabe, the Innuak, and the Dakota. It's also the national homeland of the Red River Métis. And so throughout this week, we invite you all to give thanks to the places that you visited during this exercise. We also ask you to learn more about whose traditional lands these are. And throughout the week, we ask that you craft a living land acknowledgement. A living land acknowledgement is a land acknowledgement that goes beyond a simple statement and is dynamic, alive, and embodies action and commitment to truth and reconciliation. And so in these acknowledgements, you not only recognize the truth and local history of the land you're on, but also provide an opportunity to express meaningful gratitude for the original caretakers of the land and the gifts and lessons the land offers us. Now, I am super excited to welcome Hannah Flores for today's session. Hannah Flores is a spoken word poet, published researcher, and environmentalist whose work bridges geography, resilience, and the arts. She's currently pursuing her Master's of Science in Geography at the University of Toronto, where she explores the intersections of environment, equity, and community resilience. She holds a Bachelor's of Science degree from U of T with a double major in biology and forest conservation science. And was named one of Canada's top 25 environmentalists under 25. Hannah has collaborated with leading organizations, including National Geographic and the Nature Conservancy. Her work combines field studies, spatial analysis, and storytelling to deepen our understanding of human, environment interactions, and climate justice. Her artistry as a spoken word poet is inseparable from her environmental work. Through free verse and performance, Hannah explores resilience, advocacy, and care for both human and non-human communities. She believes that poetry transforms data and science into lived emotional experiences. Hannah invites everyone to reimagine their relationship with the planet and discover how art can inspire social and ecological change. Thank you so much, Hannah, for joining us.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Rachel. I'm super happy to be here and with all of you tuning in from different places across Canada and even in the US. This is so exciting to see how students are going to be able to participate today. I want this to be really interactive. So in not just a session for me where I'm presenting you with my story and some tools and tips or advice that I may have for all of you young folks in the audience, but I also want you to take away some different exercises that we can use in the class or on your own time, even after this session is over, to create your own poems surrounding themes of nature and the environment, and to learn how to use art in an exciting way to tell stories about anything. Because at the end of the day, I see poetry and art as a tool that you can manipulate and use to portray different ideas about pretty much anything. So with that being said, that leads me into some instructions and encouragement for you guys to get out your pens and paper, to have them on standby as I go through my presentation. And while I'm talking, I want you to think about words, ideas, thoughts, feelings, anything that really comes to mind in the moment. And you can scribble that down, you can draw if you like, and even some inspiration that comes to you in terms of poetic lines that might come to you in the moment. Please write those down. And further from that, I would like as many of you to contribute your thoughts to the comment section here so that I can see them, and I'll be able to reflect on them later during the Q&A session. And with that, I'd also love for you, if you guys have any questions for me, whether it's about my life, my work, about how to write poetry, questions about advice that I might have for young people, please, by all means, put those in the chat and I will get to them in the Q&A session. And I look forward to reading everything that you guys come up with throughout this presentation. So I guess now I should probably talk about my story. Well, for reference, I am 22 now, but I started writing poetry at the age of 12. And I will say with complete honesty that when I was very young, I was also very shy. I actually, at one point, really didn't like public speaking at all. In English class, we would have to write speeches and present them in front of the class. I remember I was in 4th grade and I was so nervous and I wanted it to be over as soon as possible. But I feel that a barrier towards me actually liking public speaking or even writing, at that time, I did not think that I was a very good writer, to be honest. And from that, I realized that the issue for me was the fact that I did not have a medium of writing that actually resonated with me. And in elementary school, I remember learning about famous poets like Maya Angelou and Shakespeare. And while I was able to appreciate the beauty and the artistry that these people had to offer to the world with their huge careers and their massive reach around the world, I felt that I was not able to write in the way that they were able to. And when we would write haikus, for example, there would be restrictions on the number of lines and words that you could have in each one. And I didn't like having all of these rules to have to follow in order to write poetry. So I didn't think that I was able to actually write poetry in that way. But come around 6th grade, and I was 12 years old, and my English teacher, she played a YouTube video for the entire class to see. And this was a YouTube video of some youth from the United States. They were performing a spoken word poem that they had come up with for a national competition. And I did not know that poetry could actually be performed. I had never seen anything like this. They were reciting their poetry into the microphone and pouring their heart and soul out on the stage. And I thought it was beautiful. I was mesmerized. And after the video, I remember vividly that I pointed at the screen and I told my teacher at the time that I don't know what I just witnessed, but I want to do what they're doing. And I haven't really looked back since. You'll see at the top of the screen, I have some photos from when I was 12 and I was performing a poem on stage. And that same elementary school teacher, Mrs. Papakinomo, is in the pink shirt standing on the left to me on that stage. So she was a huge inspiration in starting my journey with spoken word, because I also loved that free verse. In the word itself, in free verse, there's so much freedom in being able to express yourself without constraints of lines or having to rhyme. I loved being able to sort of allow myself to come up with my own style of writing that was unique to me. And in that uniqueness and gaining that sort of self-confidence in my writing, it sort of unlocked this other half of myself that I didn't even know I had. And that led me to speak at other schools. I would write and perform poetry at different class assemblies for Remembrance Day, for Black History Month. And I had so much fun doing it. It truly has become an extension of who I am, and I feel that I'm inseparable from my work as a poet, and I feel that poetry really is a part of me and I can't live without it. And in that passion that I have, I've been able to talk on CBC radio and perform some poetry from there. And that was in high school. So that was even a really exciting time for me. And I remember all my friends were huddled around their car radios and they were listening to some of my poems. It was a really beautiful experience to be able to share all that I had in my poetry and to share that perspective that I had of the world, whatever it was that I was writing about, with other people in an artistic and emotional way. And that also led me to the Toronto Raptors. There's another photo of me performing in Scotiabank Arena, which was, I don't even have the words to explain how incredible of an opportunity that was, and how I didn't even know that I could write a poem about basketball, because that's what that poem was focused on, given the setting. And I feel that I've been able to use poetry, again, as a language tool for communication of whatever I'm thinking about. And I can apply poetry to pretty much any topic, and I love challenging myself. I've written poetry about racism, feminism, climate change, which we'll get into more, and all kinds of different things. But I never knew that I could write about sports or about body image and about all different kinds of things. So I really do see art as a tool and as a lens that you can use to look at different things through. And that leads me into the other half of who I am. And so for as long as I can remember, when I was very young, I loved being outside. Even though I was shy, I loved going outside and interacting with nature, going out in my backyard. I remember even my family would take me out on little nature walks in and around the parks where we lived. And those are really fond memories that I hold close to my heart, because I was given that exposure and that chance to understand the world around me and to be curious. And that is what led me to loving the sciences, because science really is just curiosity packaged in a fancy word. And I feel that through the sciences and being able to pursue higher education at the university level. And now that I'm in my master's degree, so even further from that, you can do the math. I've been in school since I was 4 and I'm 22 now, so I've been in school forever. But I absolutely adore what I study because I also use something called science communication. And that's a term that's being thrown around more these days because it's actually turned into a career path of its own that all of you could potentially pursue if it's of interest. Because in academia and in higher education, I see the opportunity to study at a higher level as an immense or a very huge privilege. And I'm very grateful that I get to study the environment and climate change and forestry at a high level that not everyone gets to experience. And through science communication, the whole idea is to make this information accessible and interesting for all different kinds of people from all walks of life, whether they have a university or college education or not, whether they speak a different language, if they're of a different culture, if they're from a different country, it doesn't matter, because I believe that knowledge is power, and you've probably heard that phrase thrown around a lot. But I also believe that knowledge should not be hidden behind a lock and key, and that we really should be sharing what we learn, because everyone is talented in something and they have something unique to offer the world. So why keep that to yourself? We should all learn from each other and share that. And that is what I do a lot with the research that I do. So not only have I looked at issues related to forest fires, which you probably might see in the media a lot, especially on the news, as these forest fires are happening. The issue with forest fires also connects to health, and people's ability to breathe clean air is compensated or is compromised by the fact that wildfires produce a huge amount of smoke, and smoke travels with wind. So even if a fire is not located in a certain location, the smoke can still travel to surrounding areas and harm more groups of people that way. And the research that I've done is actually quite visual. So one way that I love to communicate the science data that I've collected is through maps, because visualizations, a lot of people are very visual learners, and I love to appeal to that through maps, where you can use colors and imagery to really drive home the points that a scientist would want to emphasize in their work, and to allow people to get a good understanding of their work without going into the nitty-gritty details of numbers and things that might honestly be a little bit boring. And in that, I also, through my education, I was able to learn how to identify different species of trees. So tree identification using your 5 senses to look at the leaves and the bark and the really unique details that make each kind of tree special, and a key functional aspect of the broader ecosystem that they're a part of, and why they're there and why they're so important, is I've actually been able to use the skills that I've gained in tree ID and pass that on through engaging with the public. So at the top, you can see a photo of me leading a public tree tour in and around the University of Toronto campus. And these tours are, just on my own volunteer time, just out of sheer passion for trees and getting people excited about the outdoors, especially in a city setting where not a lot of people have access to green space, which is another issue that I do like to research. So giving people the chance to engage with the environment and to learn about what makes it so special, and to really notice the fine details in the environment and the beauty and the importance of all of these different species that come together to make our lives better, and to enjoy the outdoors. Because I also feel that if you can name what a tree species is, and you're able to point at a tree and identify it, you can develop a sense of care for that tree and for the ecosystem that it's in. And people who are caring people turn into protective people who want to protect these green spaces and be champions for change in environmental science and conservation. So that is what I love to do. And I feel that within this idea of science communication, which is a huge part of what I do, I go to conferences to talk about my work to different audiences. I love talking to students like you guys in the audience. And, with science communication, I also change the way that I present my information to tailor it to the interest of my audiences. So that is another thing that I love to do. And it does relate to poetry in the fact that it is an art form. Science can be an art through the way that you communicate it and through the way that you talk about the work that you're doing or the research that you've done and the data that you've collected. It's all under this big umbrella of storytelling, and it applies in the pure arts, but also in the sciences, because good science communication can lead to a wave of positive social change and really encouraging people to be passionate and protective of the environment. So why do I do all of this? I feel that a lot of my motivation comes from that aspect of sharing knowledge, which is something that I firmly believe in. I think that it's important to also work with other people who are in the same space and sort of network in that way and make friends who are artists or climate change activists. And I have friends in both communities, and I'm grateful for all of the relationships that I've been able to cultivate through the work that I'm doing and meeting like-minded individuals to accomplish things together. I also thought that it was cool that one day a parent reached out to me and said that their child actually wanted to work on their Black History Month project and have me be the focus of the person that they choose for the project, which was honestly one of the coolest things that I've ever been approached about. And it was a complete honor for me to be able to be the focus of this particular student's project. And I feel that with working with students, I also have a lot of motivation because I was once in your shoes, literally. I was the shy kid who didn't think that she could write and, was trying to figure out her place in the world. I was young. I didn't know what the future was holding for me. And I feel that, growing up and doing poetry slams and getting confidence through the artwork that I was able to share with other people, it completely changed my life. And I would love to offer those same opportunities to youth. So that's a picture of me with another Canadian poet, Dwayne Morgan, who actually ran the poetry slams that I was a part of growing up. He was the one who approached my school board at the time and wanted to put out this initiative for youth. And I thought that that was really special, being able to pass on that torch to the younger generation. And I've gained a lot of inspiration from that in wanting to organize poetry slams for younger people and being a mentor to students as well. And I love putting out workshops to get youth engaged in poetry, even if they think that poetry is not for them. There may be one workshop or one session that might actually change their frame of mind and push them towards poetry in a positive way. And at the bottom left, you might be wondering, who are all these crazy characters in this photo? Well, I'm a part of a young adult collective of poets. We are going to be launching our poetry editorial video compilation soon. We've all written individual poems about things that we care about, and they're all very different. And together we've created this huge video project, almost like a film, to showcase our individual poems. And we've all become very close friends, almost like a second family, just in getting to know each other over the last year. And that is where one of my poems actually came from, in that I wrote a poem focused on my interest in forest fires and deforestation and destruction, and I turned that into a poem. So I was able to bridge my two worlds by using the passion that I have for science and for the outdoors and for nature and wanting to protect it, and channeling those emotions into poetry and writing a poem about it. So, what exactly is poetry? Well, I'm sure in your English classes you've probably seen different things about poetic devices and different things that you can use. So, feel free to populate the comment section with any of these devices that you might have examples of, or your own little thoughts and words. Again, I'd love to see what you guys are thinking and what you're coming up with in the comment section. And if you have any questions, but I'll just do a quick overview of some tools for written poetry, but also for spoken word, because I feel that the theatrical element of poetry adds an entire new dimension to words on a page. And you can really breathe life into the story that you're trying to tell through your written words by reciting it in a way that is powerful. So, in terms of metaphors, that would look like creating emotion through imagery. And sometimes you can even have an entire poem that sits within a giant metaphor that is consistent throughout. And that can be a really creative tool to use in your writing. I know that I love to use metaphors, maybe a little too much, but it is probably my favorite tool out of all of these. Repetition, you can add emphasis to certain ideas that you want to stand out in your poem. That could also be powerful as well. And within that, there is building rhythm, where in performance poetry and in spoken word, you can change the speed of how fast you're talking, you can change the pace, and also pausing. Pauses are extremely powerful, in that not just reciting your poetry is powerful, but the silence is equally as important and can be very effective in wanting to drive home a certain point and draw attention to something. And as for voice, that's another aspect of performance-based or spoken word poetry, where you can add urgency, softness, and power, and change of tone to change the story. And in the context of nature, and for this workshop, there's also the idea of grounding your poem in your five senses and how you experience the world outside and the environment that you're in, or with climate change issues that really strike a chord with you. It's important to ground them in sensory details of what you're hearing, what you're seeing, what you might smell, what you might taste. All of these things are really important to add dimension to your writing and to make it seem more real. And the interesting thing about performance poetry in particular is that with performance poetry, you can have one poem that is read by two different poets and have it sound completely different. And that is always really exciting to see, how the way that somebody says something can completely change the feeling of the poem. So it's really not just about what you say, but it is how you say it as well. And with that, I would love to recite a poem that I have written. I actually wrote this poem in March of this year, back when I was attending a summit in BC for youth across the country. And it was my first time in BC, and it was the final night, our last campfire before everyone had to go, that I wrote this for, and that I wanted to share my poem about the experience, and also the fact that I am always so inspired by all of my friends who are in the climate change space and doing work in incredible ways with youth and with conservation of different environments, and really wanting to sort of write a letter about some of the struggles that we as young people experience in entering the field of climate change and climate science as well. So this poem is really a dedication to the folks that I met and the friends that I made at that summit, but it's also a message to all of you in this way too. They say we are too loud, too restless, too eager to unravel the world as if it wasn't already coming apart at the seams. They call us reckless, but what is caution to those who were born into smoke? To those who grew up breathing air thick with someone else's mistakes, choking on the exhaust of generations that told us to dream big while burning the ground beneath our feet. We learned how to speak with fire before we even knew our own voices. Our words sparked in classrooms where the heat of truth felt forbidden. We carried torches of anger, of hope, of fury, softened by possibility. Learning how to strike matches where the darkness seemed endless, we were taught to build futures, from cinders and ash to gather sparks like seeds and plant them in broken soil. We drew blueprints in smoke trails, pressed our palms to the earth's cracked skin, feeling for its pulse, promising to make it beat stronger. They call us dreamers, as if vision is something to be mocked, as if our flames are only destructive and not the very light guiding the way. They tell us to calm down, to be realistic, to silence our blaze to a smolder, but we are not embers fading into the night. We are wildfires with purpose. We are the ignition that will not be extinguished. We are the heat rising up from the core, the magma pushing through the fault lines, the molten truth they cannot swallow. We have seen forests fall, oceans boil, skies shudder with smoke and grief, but we will keep burning. Still, we keep burning. Still, we keep breathing fire into futures they said were already gone. And when the world calls us reckless, we answer with flame. When they call us naive, we answer with heat. And when they call us broken, we answer with the blaze that turns rubble into fuel, turns disaster into resilience, turns every scorched landscape into something fierce enough to bloom. Thank you. I really, really love that poem, and I see it as a letter of encouragement to all of you. And with that, I'd like to wrap up my talking portion of the presentation. Feel free to reach out to me via social media, and I'd love to hear from all of you and any questions that you have.
Wow, thank you so much, Hannah, for just sharing how intertwined science and your work as a poet are connected, and how they are very similar in their art and their creativity. So thank you, so inspiring, and I hope the learners tuning in feel inspired from your words. If you have any questions, or if there's any things that Hannah spoke on that really resonated with you, feel free to pop those in the chat. If you're a learner watching, ask your educator, your teacher to pop those in the chat as well. We do just have some comments that have come into. Lorelai has said that was such a powerful poem to listen to, and I 100% agree. Yeah, just such beautiful and powerful words in that poem. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you so much, Lorelai, for that comment. I really appreciate it. And it definitely did come from a place of passion and love for the environment, and also the people who are in my life who inspire me every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, someone said that hit me right in the heart.
Oh.
Amy Kent has asked, who inspired you? So I know you spoke about your teacher who really got you started in poetry, but maybe you could speak on like people who are around you that maybe really inspire your work today.
I love that question. I think there are so many people that are, the long list of names that's churning in my head right now. I wouldn't be able to say all of them in this call, but I definitely think that, people in my generation I find are very inspiring, because despite not being taken seriously all the time, or not being invited to the big boardrooms and the meetings with top executives in different spaces, we're still fighting for a chance and inserting our voices into these conversations and making space for ourselves. So I would say my friends always inspire me, because we met through being taught in the same programs at university, and also some friends who I still have from high school. I feel that even if they're not in the climate space, I think young people, we have so much tenacity and energy to share, and we're so willing to invite other young people to be a part of that conversation.
Amazing. Another comment here from Monique just saying, "We're beginning to study on habitats, and we can't wait to try to write poetry on the topic." So already you're inspiring poetry to integrate into science in the classes of these learners. Um, do have two questions from Hannah as well as from Tiffany. They're just curious about how long does it take you to write a poem? What is kind of your writing process when you are crafting a new poem?
That's a great question. I think when I would categorize my poems into two categories. There's poems that, I come up with the topic and it's from a place of, my own personal emotions that I'm feeling in an instant versus poems that I am commissioned to write, where someone wants me to write a poem about a specific topic. And, whether I come up with a topic or not, it's really tailored towards an event or for a specific person to portray a certain story. So if I'm not coming up with the initial topic, I feel that it does take me longer to do those commissioned pieces because it's not driven by my own emotions. So with my own writing process, aside from commissioned work that I do, I write when I feel something and when I feel an emotional tug. And a lot of these poems that I have, especially related to climate change, does come from not just a place of love for the people who are in the climate space, but also a place of frustration for what is happening with the planet. I try to stay up to date on news and global issues and all kinds of different things and what is happening to the planet. I feel that that definitely strikes a chord with me, which encourages me to start. And then with the writing process, I always start by writing down how I'm feeling. Even if it's not an actual line of poetry and it doesn't sound like a poem yet, it doesn't have to. I just write for the sake of writing, and maybe it looks more like a journal entry before I actually turn it into a poem, where I start to make connections between, like, using metaphors. I love using metaphors. So being able to create visuals that represent something, that have like an underlying representation beneath the surface, is something that I love to do, and have like maybe an element of surprise or reveal in the poem where an entire metaphor that I keep throughout actually is flipped, and then you see the real meaning behind the poem. So I think that sort of encompasses my process, where I can't often plan a set time that I'm going to write. It just happens. If I'm on the train even and I have my phone out, I will write in my notes if I think of something, because I don't want to forget it later.
Amazing. And I know, like, I've heard other poets speak about when they write something and they write it from the heart, they write it and then they leave it because that was just like an in the moment process for them. Is that something that you do, or do you tend to like go back to poems and tweak and revise?
Yes, I definitely do go back. I think it depends on the poem. Sometimes I'm able to write most of an entire, if not an entire poem in one sitting. If I feel like a real visceral emotional tug towards something, and it's something that's been on my mind maybe for some amount of time, and I just want to do like a brain dump and it sort of turns into a poem, then it can happen maybe in an hour. But then with some other poems, I tend to be a little bit picky. So I do like to go back and revisit and sort of critique my own work and see how, experimenting with different lines, taking things away and adding things can be a way to revise that.
Great. Yeah, thanks for sharing a little bit more about that. We did have a question from Jennifer's class and a student who wanted to know, if you had one message for the world or for the learners that are watching, what would that message be?
Oh no. um, I love this question, Jennifer. And I think this is a tricky question, but I would say that I think the world needs to do a better job of, like, with people thinking outside of themselves and really trying to put themselves in other people's shoes, and also to think beyond their own interests. I feel like, especially in North America, we're very individualistic, and we're moving away from other worldviews of, community, and really looking at different angles of a particular issue, and not staying stuck in your own narrow point of view. I think that that would allow for a lot of people to share their own ideas in a comfortable way, and so that we can relate to one another and learn more from people by accepting other people's perspectives, and also in nature, in thinking about the world around us, in that not everything needs to have some sort of incentive in order to be a part of something, but sometimes it can come from a place of altruism. So again, thinking outside of yourself and doing things for the greater good is so important.
Amazing. Thank you. It's not a question, but I feel like I need to highlight it. Hannah Shin shared that one of their students also wanted to let you know that they feel so inspired by you that they would like to choose you as a topic for a research project in their class. So,
Oh my goodness. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Yeah, feel free to reach out to me after this session if you would like to pursue that. I'm an open book.
of that, thank you. Amy Kent wants to know a little bit more about when and how did you overcome your fear of speaking in public?
Ooh, you know what? I will be honest and say that I feel like fear in doing something like that never truly goes away. It's just that you get used to it. So I might still be a little bit nervous, like get the jitters just before I go up on stage or just before I do that. And I feel that's with every performance artist and every performer that you've seen, whether it's a ballet artist or a singer, or a musician. It doesn't matter who it is. Everybody feels nerves about everything. And I feel that the way that I've done it is that I've practiced so many times, and I've also shared my work with a lot of people who I don't know. I find myself sometimes still nervous to perform in front of my family because they always ask, like, can I hear this poem? And sometimes I don't, because I don't know, I feel like because I know them, then there's that other connection element that might make me more nervous. And then with performing in front of different groups of people, it's like I've gotten so comfortable socializing with different kinds of people. Therefore, that translates into how I perform and my confidence in being in front of a crowd. And honestly, I focus on, in performing, I focus on making sure that I do justice for the poem, and that I focus on the way that I want to present the poem to a crowd so that it is perfected in a way that I love and that I want to come across in a certain way. So when I see a crowd, I might look at faces and I might make eye contact, but I'm really just thinking about the integrity of the poem the whole time.
Amazing. Thank you. And so we do have just like maybe a last kind of question here. A couple people have asked, where can they maybe learn more about your poetry, maybe see more of your poems? Are those available on your social media and your website?
Yes, yes, I do have a YouTube channel. It does have a lot of my older work from previous years, and also there's a QR code with my LinkedIn. And then I also do regular updates on social media like Instagram, as well as LinkedIn, where I talk about my work and I talk about my poetry and share some of those poems in video form. And I do have another poem which will be released in video form very soon. The launch is happening next week. So I will be putting that on social media channels as well. And of course, I also do promote when I'm going to be doing performances in public. So, keep an eye out for that as well.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Hannah. I just want to say thank you again for spending some time with us today. It seems you've already inspired so many learners to hopefully go outside today and try their hand at poetry and maybe try writing a couple lines, writing a full poem. If you do happen to go outside today and take your poetry with you, I would love to see it. I know Hannah probably would love to read the things that you and your learners put together. So feel free to share them with us at info@Take Me Outside, and we can pass those along to Hannah. Also, feel free to put in the chat, what is your plan for going outside today? It is Take Me Outside Day, so we would love to hear and see how you're getting outside. Just a reminder, we have one more session today with Remy Roden, a Take Me Outside Day staple. He will be joining us at 10 a.m. Pacific time for a environmental sing-along. So feel free to join us in a little bit for that session. And just wanted a special thanks to all of our prize and resource partners for their generous support for Take Me Outside Week, the Outdoor Learning School and Store, Strong Nations, Inside Education, Science World, Oceanwise, and River Institute, just to name a few that have supported us throughout the week with prizes and resource donations. And like I mentioned, we want to see your photos. We want to know how you're getting outside. So feel free to use the hashtag Take Me Outside Day throughout the week on any photos that you might be posting on social media. You can also email us those photos at info@takemeoutside. And we have also created a photo submission form that can be found on our website on the Take Me Outside page if that is easier for you to share your learning moments from the week as well as your photos. There will be an email going out to prize winners following today's session. And remember, we give away prizes at every session. So just as a thanks for joining us live. We hope to see you at today or tomorrow for our last session of the week. We thank you for joining us and happy Take Me Outside Day. Bye.